The tension surrounding the Indiana Fever has quietly been building for months, but now it has reached a moment where everything feels like it could tip in either direction. What once looked like the most promising season in franchise history is suddenly surrounded by uncertainty, deadlines, and a standoff that stretches far beyond a single team. At the center of it all is a date that now looms over the entire WNBA calendar like a ticking clock, March 10th, if nothing changes before that day arrives. The 2026 WNBA season, a season that many believed would redefine the league, could stall before it even begins. The Fever, a team built around the meteoric rise of Caitlin Clark may have more to lose than anyone else. The situation escalated after an unprecedented moment in league history. In December 2025, WNBA players made a decision that had never happened in the league's 29-year existence. The Players' Union authorized a strike vote, and not by a narrow margin or a divided locker room. The result was overwhelming. 98% of players supported giving their leadership the power to shut the league down if negotiations failed. That kind of vote doesn't happen unless the frustration has already reached a boiling point. It was a message that could not be ignored, directed squarely at the league's ownership group and leadership. The players were saying, in the clearest possible way, that the current system was no longer acceptable. This vote didn't appear out of nowhere. For 15 months leading up to that moment, negotiations between the league and the Players' Union had been slowly grinding forward with very little progress. During that same time, the financial landscape of the WNBA was shifting dramatically. Expansion franchises were suddenly selling for massive valuations. Teams in Toronto and Portland were entering the league with price tags that would have been unimaginable just a few years earlier. At the same time, the league secured a new media deal that promised to bring in significantly more money than any previous agreement. To the outside world, it looked like the WNBA was entering a golden era of growth, but inside locker rooms across the league, players saw a very different reality. Despite the rising franchise values and growing television exposure, the average salary for a WNBA player in 2025's at around $120,000 per year. For many fans, that number came as a shock, especially when compared with the billions of dollars circulating through other professional leagues. To the players themselves, it felt like proof that the financial boom they were helping create was not being shared fairly. For the Indiana Fever, the timing of this dispute could not be worse. Because negotiations have stalled, free agency across the entire league has effectively frozen. Teams are unable to sign players, negotiate contracts, or finalize roster moves. The system has come to a complete halt while the two sides argue over the structure of a new collective bargaining agreement. That means the Fever, a team that had finally positioned itself as a legitimate contender, cannot even begin to build the roster they planned for the upcoming season. One of the most important pieces caught in that limbo is Kelsey Mitchell the dynamic guard who has become one of Clark's most important teammates. Mitchell is technically a free agent right now, but the Fever cannot offer her a contract. They cannot negotiate a deal, finalize terms, or guarantee that she will remain in Indiana. Instead, Mitchell is spending her offseason competing in the Winter League known as Unrivaled waiting like so many other players for clarity that may or may not arrive in time. The uncertainty is beginning to show. Recently, Mitchell admitted publicly that the situation feels unsettling. When players across the league talk privately, the same word keeps surfacing: scary. No one knows what the next few weeks will bring. No one knows whether the season will start on schedule or whether negotiations will collapse into a full work stoppage, another cornerstone of the Fever's future. Boston technically has more security for now. Boston remains on her rookie contract, meaning she is already locked into a deal with Indiana under the current system. But even that stability comes with a shadow hanging over it. The contract Boston signed was negotiated under an older financial structure that capped top salaries at around $149,000. The next collective bargaining agreement will determine what the next generation of contracts looks like. And Boston is exactly the kind of player whose future earnings could be dramatically affected by those changes. For Boston, this negotiation is not just about the present season. It is about the next decade of her career. It will determine what loyalty to a franchise truly means in financial terms and whether the league's biggest young stars will feel valued enough to commit long-term. All of this places an enormous amount of pressure on the league's ownership group, including one of the most influential figures in professional basketball ownership, Herb Simon. Simon has owned the Indiana Fever organization for decades and remains one of the longest-tenured owners in the entire basketball world. His experience stretches back to eras when women's basketball struggled to capture national attention. Now, as the sport finally gains unprecedented momentum, he sits on the side of the negotiating table representing ownership interests. Across from him is the league's commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, who has been tasked with navigating the most delicate negotiation in WNBA history. The central conflict revolves around revenue sharing. Players are pushing for a structure that would give them a percentage of the league's gross revenue, ensuring that their earnings rise alongside the league's growth. Ownership, however, prefers a system based on net revenue, meaning expenses are deducted before profits are shared. To the players, that difference is everything. When compensation depends on net revenue, the people controlling the books effectively control how large the final number becomes. Players fear that it allows ownership to present large headline figures while limiting the actual money that reaches the athletes generating the product on the court. The clock continues to move forward regardless of who believes they are right. The WNBA calendar leaves little room for delay. The 2026 draft is scheduled for mid-April. Training camps are supposed to open less than a week later. The regular season is set to begin in early May. Every one of those milestones depends on a functioning labor agreement. Meanwhile, one of the most recognizable faces in sports has become the unexpected center of this entire drama. Caitlin Clark's arrival transformed the WNBA's visibility almost overnight. Television ratings surged. Ticket demand skyrocketed. Media attention followed her every move. Off the court, her influence expanded even further when she signed a massive endorsement deal with Nike reportedly worth up to $28 million over 8 years. Clark's financial security means she would be able to withstand a strike far more easily than many of her peers. But that reality introduces another question that hangs quietly over the entire situation. If a strike happens, will she stand with her fellow players, or will she choose to cross the picket line and play if the league attempts to continue operations? So far, Clark has publicly expressed confidence that a deal will be reached. When she appeared as a guest analyst on Basketball Night in America she spoke about the importance of the moment for women's sports and said she believed both sides would ultimately find common ground. It was an optimistic message delivered on national television, and one that owners across the league undoubtedly noticed. But optimism cannot stop a deadline. March 10th is now approaching fast, and both sides remain far apart in their proposals. The players' union insists that the current offer would actually leave players earning less when adjusted for expenses and inflation. League officials argue that the players' demands are unrealistic within the financial structure of the sport. History shows how damaging these disputes can become. Major leagues like the NHL and NBA have experienced long lockouts in the past, and although those leagues eventually recovered, the damage to fan trust lingered for years. The WNBA has never lost a single game to a labor dispute in its entire history. Losing that streak now, at the very moment when the league's popularity is exploding, could halt its momentum in ways that no one can fully predict. For the Indiana Fever, the stakes feel even higher. This was supposed to be the season when everything came together. A generational star, a talented supporting cast, and a fanbase energized by the belief that a championship run might finally be possible. Instead, the franchise finds itself waiting on negotiations taking place far away from the hardwood. 14 days may not sound like much time, but in professional sports negotiations, it can feel like an eternity. It can also disappear in the blink of an eye, right now. The Fever's future sits suspended between those two possibilities, and as the deadline approaches, the entire league is holding its breath to see which side will move first. If you want to stay updated on how this story unfolds and what it could mean for Caitlin Clark, the Indiana Fever, and the future of the WNBA, make sure you follow the conversation closely. Do you think the players are right to demand a bigger share of the league's growth, or should ownership hold firm to protect the business side of the sport? And if a strike does happen, what role should the league's biggest stars play in that decision? Let us know what you think and stay tuned for the next chapter of this story.